Shabbat Shalom, this is Rabbi Fred Klein from the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. In this week's Parashat, we encounter Joseph in Egypt. He's the second most powerful person in the entire country, and yet he continually invokes his faith. He continually invokes the name of God. He remains true to his values. That's why probably the rabbis call him Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph the Righteous One. The specific story that the rabbis discuss as a proof text is actually in last week's Parsha, the story of Potiphar's wife. If you remember in last week's Parasha, Potiphar's wife tries to seduce Joseph, and Joseph finally resists her seduction. He, according to the Midrash, sees the image of his father in the corner and remembers his father's teachings and did not succumb to Potiphar's wife's seduction. So therefore, he was able to withstand his own inner sexual urges. And that's what being a tzaddik is. A person that's able to control all those inner chaotic forces within a person and make the right decisions. However, I'd like to share with you another idea that Elie Wiesel offers about why Joseph was a righteous person. Consider another chaotic force in the human personality that can come out at any moment. That's rage, anger, fury. And we can only imagine that Joseph had quite a bit of that. Consider the fact that his own brothers sold him to Egypt. His own flesh and blood sent him away. Now, all of us here know the end of the story, that they're going to reunite. But did Joseph know the end of the story? No, of course he didn't. The first time that Joseph sees his brothers in this week's Parsha, he does something very shocking. He throws them all into prison. It's almost as if to say, you threw me into a pit, now I'm going to throw you all into prison. And that's where the story could have ended. He could have left them languishing in prison for the end of his life. But he doesn't do that. After the third day, he reconsiders, but takes one of the brothers, Shimon, as a security for the other brothers to bring down Benjamin. Well, who is Benjamin? Benjamin is the only brother that wasn't involved in selling him to Egypt. Benjamin is his only full brother, the only person that he could actually reconnect with. Perhaps the plan was for the brothers to bring back Benjamin, and then for Joseph, like we learned at the end of this week's Parsha, to take Benjamin, and to send their other brothers away. Perhaps that would have been the end of the story. However, that's not the end of the story. As we all know, the end of the story is all the brothers come down to Egypt and the family reunifies. It's a family reunited at the end. And this is not only because Judah does teshuvah, Judah takes responsibility for Benjamin, but it's also because of Joseph. Joseph can get over his own trauma, his own anger, his own resentment, and be able to forgive. Elie Wiesel says that this is the reason why Joseph is a tzaddik. What does he do, Elie Wiesel? What do you do, Elie Wiesel asks, when your own family, those who you trust most, betray you? And here he's, of course, alluding to his own fellow citizens in Germany, his own experiences in Europe, where he was betrayed, the Jewish community was betrayed. How do you respond when you were betrayed? How do you respond to that kind of trauma? Very often, people that suffer from trauma reenact that trauma on others. They lash out. We need to break the cycle, says Elie Wiesel, and that's what Joseph did. Joseph first perhaps considered lashing back at his brothers. He threw them all into prison at the beginning. But at the end, he works towards reconciliation. And here, the victim becomes the agent for a better future for everyone, a different future. It's the victim that's working towards reconciliation. And this is why Joseph is a tzaddik, because Joseph understands that if you want to break that cycle of trauma, you have to control your inner resentment, you have to control your inner anger, you have to control your inner rage. Now consider the trauma of Wiesel and other survivors in our generation, and yet the positive impact that many of them have had in the world. Elie Wiesel was one of the great humanitarians, lovers of humanity, but he saw the depth of human depravity. And yet, He did not remain in that moment. He was able to move forward towards a greater future. And that was why he saw himself in Joseph, because Joseph too is trying to recapture the feelings of brotherhood, of love, of connection with a family that rejected him, a family that sold him into Egypt. So he could not remain in that moment of fury and anger. He controlled his inner life of rage, and therefore was able to finally create unity at the end of the book of Bereshit. I think that this idea of being able to control our inner emotions is instructive for us in our own lives. I wish all of you a very Shabbat Shalom.